It's 7 p.m. I will call this meeting of the Richfield Housing and Redevelopment Authority of November 17th, 2025 to order. We'll start with roll call.
We've noted attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Taking us to item number 3, open forum. So participants can always share their comments in person, by voice, or email. You can always request to participate virtually. For more information on submitting comments, you can refer to the HRA agenda and minutes page on the city's website. I don't think I see anyone here for open forum, but we'll just check. Did anyone call in? Not?
We did not receive any calls. Thank you.
Thank you. Taking us to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda has been approved. Taking us to item number 5, which is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting of September 15th, 2025. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. We'll then move to item number 6, presentations, is our TIF status presentation. Welcome. Come up. I'll hand it over to Executive Director Paleman to introduce.
Yes, thank you. Today we have here from Ellers, Rebecca Kurtz, who is our financial analyst with Ellers. She's going to give us our annual update on all 13 of our TIF districts. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you. Again, Rebecca Kurtz with Ellers. I also just want to quickly introduce my coworker, Sylvia Johnson. She is one of the faces behind the scenes at Ellers and works with us a lot, especially on the establishment of TIF districts and getting those documents together, along with a whole host of other things. But wanted to acknowledge her with me this evening. As introduced, what we're going to discuss is the status of your tax increment districts, and I believe there's a PowerPoint that's on its way. Well, as we're getting that pulled up, there's really kind of 3 main points that we'll talk about today. We're just going to do a quick overview of what is TIF, just a reminder at a very high level. We do a seminar in the spring, and we can talk about this for hours and hours and hours, so I'll try and give you the 2-minute version of what tax increment is.
Sorry.
Right. Oh, no, that's okay. I wasn't sure if I was going to control it or if you were, sorry. Just use the arrows. Oh, okay. We can jump to the next slide then, thank you. So we'll spend just a couple minutes refreshing on what is tax increment. And then some of you may recall that in 2023, we worked with staff and did a really deep dive into all of your tax increment districts, what the status was, did projections on when things will anticipated to be decertified, any concerns that may be out there. So we did a quick look or a deep dive in that in 2023. We have continued to review that, and so we will give an update on the challenges, the opportunities that are out there, if there are any compliance things. There are several different things that we're going to address for 2025 as we look to year end, so we'll talk about those. And then, as mentioned here, give a review of the 2025 updates because as you look at your agenda, there are some additional actions that we will want to consider prior to year end this year. So what is tax increment financing? The working definition of it is the ability to capture and use most of the increase in property taxes from new development within a defined geographic area, so very specific parcels for a specific period of time, depending on the type of TIF district, without approval from the city, or without approval from the county and the school district. So while the county and the school district do receive information, they are asked to provide comments, they're invited to the public hearing. Ultimately, with tax increment, it is that action that the city council takes after a public hearing that will decide whether or not city, county, and school taxes are captured through a tax increment district. There is the statutory site there if anybody is interested in all of the details with that. So looking at that definition from a graphic standpoint, you can see the chart on the left is the way a property is prior to being in a TIF district. Those taxes are being paid, and they, in this example, are being divided fairly equally between the city, the county, and the school district. When a TIF district is established and development occurs, you will see that those taxes to the city, county, and school district continue to go to those entities in that amount during the term of the tax increment district. However, you can see then on the right where you have the three colors that are much larger representing city, county, and school taxes. Those are the tax increment that then can be pledged to whatever the qualifying cost is. We'll talk about this in a minute as we go through the presentation more, but typically the city has provided that assistance to the developer in the form of a pay-as-you-go note, so that risk is put on the developer versus having the risk be on the HRA or the city. One thing I do want to note, and these graphics are at a very high level. So the one thing that is not shown in the graphics is there is another, these taxes are all based on tax capacity, and tax increment captures on the tax capacity. There are market value referendum taxes that are also paid that are based on the market value of properties. For the most part, those typically are related to school projects. There could be sometimes through a referendum on a city project, but most of the market value referendum taxes are tied to school taxes. Those cannot be captured or touched with tax increments. So in the event that you have this project on the right that moves forward with the new development, you see that dramatic increase in taxes. While the taxes that are tied to the tax capacity are captured through TIF, those market value referendum taxes, again, typically for the school, would increase because you would see that increase in market value. And that would be something that would come on immediately when a project is completed. You don't need to wait for the tax increment district to be decertified for that benefit.
So does that mean that with like the referendum monies, the school district still gets it during the whole life of the TIF?
Correct. They would get that through the life of the TIF, and when the value increases because of the development, that market value referendum money actually will increase based on that increase in market value. And that would happen immediately. So the first year the benefit of the TIF is in place, there would be a benefit of an increase in market value for this or referendum taxes.
Okay, that's new information for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. So taking that graphic and really projecting it forward over, in this example, 10 years for residential, with that you can see that it is shown where across that entire time, the city, county, and school are getting their taxes. The tax increment, maybe it's a phased development, so year one they get a benefit of some increase in development. By year two, the project is at full value. They receive that through year 10, and then you can see in this example, year 11, when the TIF district is done, the city, county, and school all have a larger benefit of tax capacity, and that would come online at full value after the decertification of the district. I will call out, in our example here, we do have a residential example. That is because there are other taxes, such as fiscal disparities or the state's commercial and industrial tax that is not captured through tax increment. So the graphic looks a little bit different when you start to put in that commercial piece.
Yeah. I have two questions about this, and I'm going to have trouble expressing them clearly, but I'm going to do my best. So one, like, had the property not been redeveloped, in most cases, the value of it would slightly increase year to year, right? Like, in most cases, an existing home that isn't touched increases a little bit in value over time. Is that accounted for at all, or is it like literally frozen that this thing was worth $1 million before, it'll be worth exactly $1 million in 10 years?
It is, that tax capacity literally is frozen.
Okay.
And so the argument with that, and it really depends on a lot of facts, is that while we are used to, like, our home prices going up something typically each year, or we would expect that, especially like when we look at redevelopment projects, that argument of the property or that base would go up regardless becomes a little more uncertain, because depending on if it's substandard buildings, a property that needs to be redeveloped, a lot of times we see that actually going down in value versus, depending again on how severe the redevelopment need is. But with the law, the way it is written, that tax capacity at the time it is established is flat and remains flat.
Okay, and then there's two scenarios I'm wondering about. One is, let's say everybody's value did remain exactly the same, all properties, but the jurisdiction, the county increases their levy by 10%. Is the property that's subject to TIF still going to increase the amount they pay by 10% or 10% of the county share? Or are the taxes actually frozen at the dollar amount?
So the tax capacity, or the number that the tax increment is, that is used to calculate the increment that is tied with the market value, remains during the term of the district. Tax increment itself is a formula that, in very simple terms, would be tax capacity times the tax rate. And so each year, with each of the TIF districts outstanding, the calculation and tax increment is calculated on the lower of the tax rate at the time the district was established or the current tax rate. So each year when the tax increment calculations are being done, we look to say, do we use the rate at the time the district was established, or do we use the current rate? Which one was lower? Now, in the event that, and the Cedar Point TIF district where Schaefer Richardson's apartments are.
The Raya.
The Raya, thank you. For that district, the tax rate at the time that district was established is lower than your current tax rate. So in that situation, the TIF is that tax capacity times the lower rate, which was the one at the time it was established. However, they pay property taxes based on the current pay 25 rate. And so there's a little bit of difference between the increment that's generated at the low rate or lower rate and your current rate. And that money comes back to the taxing, that spread comes back to the taxing entities.
Okay, thanks.
Does that all make sense? We're getting into the weeds here. They're great questions, but they're getting into the weeds. So I want to make sure I'm explaining it clearly for you. Okay. So then if we look at the next slide, again, just a reminder, how can TIF be used? And it depends on the type of district, but many of the common uses tie with creating or retaining jobs, redeveloping blighted areas. The city has a long history of using tax increment in that way, remediating polluted sites, constructing affordable housing. Again, that is another goal that Richfield has used tax increment for. And then all of these ultimately increasing and sometimes diversifying the tax base for the community. So as we look at the status of the city's TIP districts, the message I'm here to share tonight is that things are on track and going well. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I think there's a lot of things that we can celebrate as we go through tonight's discussion. There are not any compliance issues. You may remember that there is an annual report filed with the state auditor. At this point, we have no concerns with that. So again, things are looking good. We'll talk about this a little bit more and follow up on the discussion from last year, but there are some pooling opportunities available, and they fall in 3 general buckets. One is 10% for the Housing Trust Fund. A second bucket is a temporary spending authority that was allowed through special legislation. And then there is just the pooling that is available for all of your redevelopment districts that is part of the general TIF law. So as introduced, the city does have, and I know this is tiny, but there are 13 current TIF districts ranging from the 9 that are shown here are all active and performing and moving forward, or the 10, I should say. On the next page, there are 3 more, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time tonight talking about the Lindale Gateway Interchange West District, the Urban Village District, and the ME District, because all of these are coming to an end, and so you'll see that we'll take or recommend taking some action on them as we move forward. So as we look at the impact of these 3 districts that are being decertified this evening, or that we are recommending being decertified, and we can look to the next slide here, you can see that we are anticipating about 1.9 million in additional tax capacity that will come on in 2026 with the decertification of these districts. So again, something to, we would argue at Ellers, definitely something to celebrate, and that success of, it's been a long time coming with especially the Lindale Gateway, Interchange West, and Urban Village District. They were long districts, but as you look now to where we are today, there is a significant benefit in addition to the tax base because of the work that was done with those. Looking a little bit farther into the future, in 2030, we are looking at the Lindale Gateway West. Do you want to back up one more quick? Thanks. Yeah, thank you. The Lindale Gateway West, or the Kensington Park project, and that will legally need to be decertified in 2030. And then the following year in 2031, City Bella will be decertified. And you can see we are projecting about just under 315,000 in tax capacity for the Kensington project, and about 664 for the City Bella. However, they are out a ways, so the one thing I can promise you is those numbers will change. So on to the next slide, thank you.
Can I interrupt real quick? That $1 million, is my math right? That's about 2% of our total tax capacity, tax levy? Am I way off there?
I don't know the answer to that question, sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
I do not have that number with me. I'm sorry. I was looking at my small print here. I don't know that, but I can find out and get back to you on that. So the outstanding obligations, again, I mentioned there were a couple types of obligations that are that can be funded with tax increment. For the most part, the city has always issued pay-as-you-go notes to the developer. And with that, what it really means in simple terms is the developer funds the project, pays all the expenses. When it is done and the terms of the agreement are met, the city issues a note, and then to the extent that the developer pays their taxes and follows the requirements in the development agreement, they receive a semi-annual reimbursement of a portion of their taxes per the agreement. One other type of obligation is a general obligation bond. There were two of these that we discussed last year during the update. One of the bonds related to the Best Buy project has been paid in full, the 2012B bonds, and so those were retired in February of 2025. The third type of obligation is an interfund loan, and with that, those are typically the city pays for some costs up front and then uses TIF to reimburse it or reimburse yourself. For the most part, there are things such as early administration related to establishing a district. It could be used to pay for some project costs. That is something that is a risk on the city. You will see, not always, but for the most part, those are a little smaller amount. And that, again, is something that many, many times is tied with the initial setup of a TIF district. For the pay-as-you-go notes, I will note that, like, as we look with the Best Buy project that is being decertified because it's met its statutory maximum for the term of the TIF district, there is a balance outstanding on that pay-as-you-go note. However, because it is a pay-as-you-go note, the developer or Best Buy assume that risk, and so on your pay-as-you-go notes, there is no responsibility for the city or the HRA to make that payment or pay it in full at the time the TIF district is decertified. That is a risk that Best Buy will not get paid that full amount, and that was part of the agreement if it wasn't fully amortized. One item I do want to
interrupt real quick? Do you have a question?
Just to clarify on the Best Buy one, maybe this is a distinction without a difference. When the TIF is decertified, does that like officially go away, or is there like theoretically an amount that they're owed that just they'll never get?
I think there's two answers to that. How that is handled on their books from their standpoint, I don't know. But from a city standpoint, we will decertify, or the district will be decertified, and the pay-as-you-go note piece of it from a city standpoint goes away.
Okay. And then there might be more factors to this than that, but the reason there's such a large outstanding balance is simply because the property was worth much less than we thought it was going to be worth, and so they're not really out any money. They just didn't pay the taxes to pay themselves back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, that was one where the amount, when it was established, the amount that was anticipated for what that market value was significantly higher than where it ended up being with the minimum assessment agreement. And so a note was sized based on a significantly more expensive project, but like you said, the project wasn't valued that high, and so they didn't pay taxes on that higher amount, but they also have a balance remaining on their pay-as-you-go note.
Okay, thank you.
So you said that the 2012B bonds are paid off. From what I can see, does that mean that there are no other general obligation bonds related to TIF districts? It's all pay-as-you-go and interfund loans?
That is correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes. And you can see the three that are highlighted here in orange are the ones that we are going to be recommending decertification, or that automatically will decertify because they've reached their maximum. I do want to note that the Emmy, there is a balance on that interfund loan, and assuming that you do decide to move forward with the resolution to decertify that district, one of the actions that Ellers will work with your staff on prior to year end is to use administration or funds from another TIP district to make that interfund loan whole and close that out so it has a zero balance for you at year end. The other item that I know there was a question, so I just want to address, is that when we look at the Kensington project, there is a interfund loan on this one of about $1 million, or there's two interfund loans, and it's about $1,185,000. With that, I just want to remind that that was a project that the HRA and Council at that point in time wanted to really see that site cleaned up and redeveloped. And while it was always hoped that all of that, all of the obligations would be paid in full, it was not anticipated at the time that that district was established that it would be completely amortized. But again, the HRA and the council at that point in time felt strongly enough about making sure that site was cleaned up and redeveloped that they were willing to take that risk. So that is the one interfund loan that at this point in time, it is not projected to be completely amortized. We will continue to keep that district open, until it is required to legally be decertified and continue to pay down that. I will say one of the reasons it will not completely amortize is it also has a high interest rate, and so we're paying principal and interest on it, and with the higher interest rate, I believe it's closer to 7 to 8%. You're getting funds and making payments, but we aren't seeing the needle on the principal moving significantly. But we'll continue to monitor that and provide updates through the decertification of that district. So we can go on and talk a little bit about some specific districts. First of all, the Interchange West Lindale Gateway District, this is required to be decertified. It has run its maximum term, so even if you wanted to keep it open, you aren't able to. And you will see the benefit of this project on the tax roll for 2026. This TIF district does have two big projects in it. One was the Richfield Senior Housing, and with that we are estimating based on preliminary pay 26 market values that the city will see an estimated $532,600 in additional tax capacity for 26. Best Buy, we are estimating that there will be about $939,000 in additional tax capacity. Just because this is one that we have really watched in recent years, I did add that the market value for 2025 was $69 million, and according to the county's website, the pay 26 preliminary value is about just under $62.5 million. So I share that just because I know that has been an ongoing question, especially when the minimum assessment agreement came off. As I mentioned, with this district, it is required, there will be a resolution later on that you can consider and choose to adopt. I will say it's going to decertify whether you take that formal action and adopt the resolution or not, again, because it has reached that maximum term. The urban village is in the same situation. It's reached its maximum term, and regardless of what you do with the resolution later on this evening, the county will decertify it at the end of the year, and you will receive the benefit for pay 2026. The estimated additional tax capacity for this is about $1 million. So again, another success for the work that was done, and nice to see that finally be able to come on and provide that benefit to the community. I am going to jump here and talk a little bit about the pooling opportunities that we foreshadowed earlier. Again, with pooling, that means that unobligated TIF can be used for either redeveloping sites or helping build affordable housing. This money does not require to be used in a TIF district. So it can be used anywhere in the project area. For Richfield, your project area is your city limits. So these funds can be used anywhere within the city as long as it is meeting the requirements of redevelopment per TIF statute or helping build affordable housing. We have identified 3 districts, and again, some of this is a little bit of a repeat from prior years, but the Lindale Gateway, Interchange West, and the Urban Village districts that we just discussed have funds available for pooling along with the City Bella district. So even though these districts will be decertified, those funds can remain if you choose to. You can continue to retain those funds and use them for pooling opportunities. The one thing I will note is that they will continue to need to be reported to the state auditor annually if you do retain the funds, but with the dollar amounts that are available, that is definitely an option that you can use them for future projects. The 3 pooling options or types of pooling that are available are, again, some special legislation for 10% that could go to the Housing Trust Fund. There's temporary legislation with your spending plan, and then what we would call regular pooling, and I'll talk about each of those here. In 2021, the city and HRA received special legislation that would allow an additional 10% from your tax increment to be used for affordable housing. Money from this 10% needs to be transferred out of the TIF and into the Housing Trust Fund that the HRA has set up. In 2022, there was about $750,000 that was transferred and about $350,000 that had been spent to date. You can see that you can make a transfer anytime before December 31st of 2026. And with this, you can see what has been transferred and where some of the expenditures have come.
Rebecca?
Yep.
I just wanted to pipe in that some of these numbers, the Hempel numbers are not showing up on the affordable, in this fund here with the special legislation. You'll remember that we transferred 1.3 million from the spending plan into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and then spent it out of here. However, the way that the charts are shown up, that ends up being zeroed out. So you don't see it because it went in and then it came out. You'll see it on the next slide, but just to remind you, 1.3 million did come in and out of this fund for that project.
Thank you for that clarification. So let's jump back one slide to the temporary spending. Thank you. Another option is, as Melissa said, there's temporary spending authority that goes through December of 2026 to help stimulate private development. With this authority, there is a lot more flexibility on how the TIF can be spent. So it really kind of threw a lot of the TIF restrictions out the window on these very specific funds that were identified with this temporary legislation. A spending plan was adopted in 2022. Initially, the funds needed to be spent by 2025. By December 31st of 2025. However, there was a change in our most recent legislative session that allows cities to extend that term through December of 26, provided that an amendment be done to the spending plan. And so as you go forward on the agenda later on this evening, there is a resolution that would recommend extending the term of that spending plan for the city and HRA one more year. And you can see, again, we are looking at the same funds with that spending authority, looking at the funds that were unobligated in the Lindale Gateway Interchange West, Urban Village, and then the City Bella TIF District. While the HRA does have a resolution this evening related to the spending plan, ultimately the City Council then is required to hold a public hearing, which is scheduled for November 25th, and they will also take action after that public hearing, which would be the final step to make that extension. To the extent that funds have been put in the spending plan, if they are not spent by December 31st of 2026, they would transfer back to regular TIF funds, and you could use those either through pooling or into the Housing Trust Fund. And that would be something that we will be monitoring and probably having discussions with staff and with the HRA earlier in the year on what is remaining and what you want to do. So as we get into mid-year in 26, we'll be back with more discussion on that specific item. And the final pot for pooling is regular pooling, 25% that is available for any of your redevelopment TIF districts. With this, I will remind you that the city and HRA can retain up to 10% for administration, which we try and do. That does count against this 25%. So while the law is 25%, in reality, if you're maximizing your admin, it's about 15%. But again, these funds can be used for any public redevelopment costs, and they are tied. We've called out the Lindale Gateway, the Urban Village, and City Bella District, and what is projected as we move forward. But some of your other redevelopment TIF districts also may have some percent of pooling that would be available. These are just the main ones that are producing the most. Again, a reminder that they do need to be spent on redevelopment TIF eligible projects, so they're not just general fund, but they are available for redevelopment projects if you had blighted buildings that you were looking to clean up or acquire, or other eligible TIF expenses.
Is there a time limit on those? Remind me.
These funds are available for as long as you want to hold on to them. You will need, as long as there's a fund balance in the district, you will need to continue to report on it, but there is not a legal time that says they have to be spent within, I'm going to make up 5 years after decertification. Yep. So with your districts, you do have a couple housing TIF districts, and as we look at housing districts and affordable housing, there are different criteria that are out there. The criteria for TIF statute is that 20% of the units either need to be at 50% area median income, or 40% of the units need to be at 60% of area median income. Those numbers are updated annually by HUD and Minnesota Housing, so they do adjust as incomes adjust. For your rental projects, such as the Woodlake Housing and the Chamberlain, they are required to remain affordable with those income limits for the entire life of the TIF district. You do have one owner-occupied housing, the RF64. That project was required to have the first owner meet income at either 100 to 115% of area median income. That was a one-time test, and so as those units or homes recycle, that affordability requirement does not remain on the for sale piece. With housing districts, there is not that 25% pooling limit that we see with redevelopment. There really is no limit. So any unallocated tax increment that is not going to pay obligations could be used for future affordable housing projects that meet, at minimum, these requirements that are set forth in the TIF statute. The two that we have identified with some potential is Wood Lake, and we are anticipating that there will be about $3.3 million available for affordable housing by 2039. There continues to be a pay-as-you-go note that is outstanding through 2035, and so that is a set dollar amount of $175,000 per year. So anything above that is available today, but then when that pay-as-you-go note is paid in full in 2035, there will be about 4 years where we are anticipating that there will be about $260,000 in increment that again could be used specifically for affordable housing. The Chamberlain project, or 2017 TIF District 2017-1, we are anticipating not quite $9 million by 2045. There is a pay-as-you-go note that is in place. We are anticipating through 2036 when that will be paid in, or will be done. And then after that, we would anticipate about $825,000 a year until the time the district is decertified in 2045. I will say with both of these, after that the obligation to the developer is paid in full, it really becomes then a policy decision on how you want to move forward. And so with what we've presented here, that assumes that you would keep the district open through the statutory maximum and then collect those funds for affordable housing. You do have the option, after the obligations are paid in full, to decertify them early, which would then put the property back on the tax roll at the new market value. So those are some policy discussions that we'll continue to monitor, and as we get closer to those dates, the discussions that we'll be having with staff and elected or appointed officials. We have talked historically about compliance for the different districts. There isn't a lot to share this year. We don't have any districts that had concerns with the 4-year rule, so we don't have a slide on that. There are 2 districts that are having their 5-year rule in March of 2026, and that means that in order to continue to move forward, they need to either they need to have an agreement in place and be having all of the expenses that will be reimbursed with TIF paid out. I'm going to start at the bottom of this. The Link 65 or Linview project has a deadline in March of 26. They have met their 5-year rule requirement. That project has moved forward. Costs have been submitted. No concerns with that. The ME, or the 2020-2 district, this was the area at the corner of 101 66th Street East. That project, as I'm sure you may know, has not moved forward. And at this point, we do not see a pathway to meet the requirements of the 5-year rule by March of 2026. So there is a resolution that will be presented later on this evening, and we are recommending that you do move forward with decertifying that district, because if you do not take that action, it will basically go away in 26 regardless, without having a developer, all of the TIF expenses done, and an agreement in place.
A question, if I may. If I remember correctly, this is a redevelopment district, but.
You can fast forward to, or go to the next slide with the Emmy. Yes, you are
It's
correct.
a redevelopment district. So the next developer that comes along will not be able to put together a redevelopment district, which yields more money to pay project costs. Is that correct?
Partially. So yes, it is a redevelopment district, and with the decertification of this, unless there were other parcels and it was reconfigured, it likely cannot be another redevelopment district. I am not as familiar with all the individual parcels surrounding. My opinion is it would be hard to make it another redevelopment district.
I think it would be.
Okay, so with that, you could move forward, or if a developer came, a housing TIF district could be set up there. With that, it does have the same term as a redevelopment district. So both of them have maximum terms of 26 years of increment. So depending on what is built on the site, it could generate about the same amount of increment. With the project that was proposed that did not go forward, that was going to generate the same increment whether it was a housing district or a redevelopment district. The difference is now with it being assuming it would be a housing district, there would be those statutory requirements for income in there. And so they would suddenly need to have, at minimum, 20% of the units available for people at 50% or 40% of the units available for people at 60% AMI. There also is, in a housing district, you can have some retail or commercial. There is a limit on how much you can have in there. So with the way that site and the plan was designed that didn't move forward, again, I believe we would have been fine with having a housing district with that smaller amount of commercial. You could not put a housing district and have like and I know this wouldn't happen, but for example, 4 floors of commercial with 2 floors of housing. So the commercial piece is limited, but that doesn't mean it's not an option. We would have to just look at the specific plans to make sure there wasn't too much commercial in it.
Thank you.
So if it at some point switches to be a housing redevelopment, or a housing TIF district, does the clock start over, or does this 5 years get subtracted off of that, or do you get the full 25?
So what we are recommending is that resolution for decertification be adopted, which makes this go away. And like it never happened, basically. And so then when a new development comes forward, a new TIF district would need to be set up, and like we discussed, likely a housing one versus redevelopment, and then the clock starts over. So it's just brand new, clean slate to move forward.
How limited is the commercial component then in the housing district? You gave an example of like 4 floors of commercial, which would be fairly unrealistic in any situation. Could you have essentially street level commercial? Is that?
Yes, it's, oh gee, now I'm starting to question myself. I believe it is 15%, 15. And so yes, street level commercial on a site like that with multiple floors of housing above it, and I believe there's parking, or at least on the plan there was parking underground. You would be just fine with street level commercial.
One more question. Just a clarification, 15% of the total building square footage?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I touched on this, the admin, just again, that reminder that you are able to retain 10% for revenues and expenses for admin. So that helps with staff time, Eller's fees, attorney fees, all of that. It varies on what that 10% is tied to, whether it is on increment or expenses, depending on the type or the time when the district was established, but that is something that we work with staff and monitor. That 10% limit must be met, though, when the TIF district decertifies. So you can't just, take that 10% off the top. You have to have some documentation that those expenses actually are being spent. Excuse me. And it is not an annual calculation. So we recognize a lot of times when you're establishing the district and staff might be really busy with a lot of that preliminary stuff, it may be heavy or more than 10% the first few years. At the end, when the district is operating well, it might be a little bit less. So that 10% looks at the time the district is established. Overall, it's at 10%. So again, to kind of summarize what we've talked about today, the Interchange West Lindale Gateway and the Urban Village District will decertify in December. There are resolutions if you'd like to take formal action on that, but again, it's going to happen regardless of the resolution. The county will take care of that. The other districts generally are on track. We don't have any concerns with that. We are recommending to take action to decertify the EMI. There's a tiny amount of value that will go back on the tax roll, but really what that does is set a clean slate for a new developer and looking to the future for that. There also is that action then to amend the spending plan to extend the term one more year for 2026. And then just as we continue to look forward to the future, we'll continue to work with staff on looking at those affordable housing opportunities, how money can be used in the Housing Trust Fund. As we know, we have one more year to shift dollars into that, and then any of the pooling expenses that may be relevant for other projects that are moving forward in the future. With that, I appreciate your patience. I know I dump a lot of information on you during this annual update, but appreciate the great questions, and I'm happy to answer if there are any other ones.
It's always great information, so we always appreciate you being here and going through and talking through what TIF is. I always send people to these YouTube videos as they ask questions about it, so I personally really appreciate that as well. Anybody have any last questions, comments? Start with Gordon.
Well, I just basically have a comment. I want to thank you for the presentation, because if there's any one thing that's always plagued with misinformation, it's tax increment financing. So I think the presentation tonight arms us with a lot of good information that we can share with the public.
Good, thank you. And if you do get questions or need additional information on some of the questions or discussions you're having, don't ever hesitate, to reach out, and I can work with staff and make sure that I get you all the information that you need so you can answer those questions, because we do know there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yes, Mary.
I just wanted to add my thanks to what was expressed already, because this was very clear, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, and we will get to those resolutions later in our meeting, so thank you both for coming. All right, item number 7 is our consent calendar. I will hand this over to Executive Director Pillman.
Thank you, Chair Bruce Daniels, members of the board. The consent calendar tonight contains only one item, which is acted upon by the HRA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further HRA action on these items is necessary. However, any HRA commissioner may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the regular agenda for HRA discussion and action. Item A, and the single item on your consent calendar tonight, is consideration of a resolution authorizing an amendment to the developer agreement with the West Hennepin Affordable Housing Land Trust, also known as WALT. And I submit this for your approval. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone who wants to remove this item from the consent calendar? Seeing no one, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent calendar has been approved. Taking us to item number 9, there is no public hearing, so we'll move on to item number 10, resolutions. And we'll start with 10A. Executive Director Pillman.
Yes, thank you. The first item for your consideration tonight, as we've discussed earlier, is an amendment to the 2022 spending plan for unobligated tax increment. In 2021, as we discussed tonight, the state legislature provided temporary authority to use unobligated tax increment from existing tax increment districts to help stimulate private development that would not otherwise occur. The legislation allowed greater flexibility in the use of this increment in order to create or retain jobs. On November 21st, 2022, the HRA adopted a tax increment spending plan for up to $6,345,000 in unobligated tax increment from the Lindale Gateway Interchange West, Urban Village, and City Bella tax increment financing districts. The 2021 temporary authority required projects to be under construction by the end of this year. Earlier this year, the legislature amended the temporary legislation to allow authorities to amend their spending plans to allow funds to be spent through the end of December, or until December 31st, 2026. The city supported and advocated for that amendment. The amended spending plan, which is attached to your report, extends this deadline for using the funds. No other changes are proposed. The strategy to retain unobligated tax increment in the most flexible fund for the maximum amount of time continues. And as Rebecca discussed earlier tonight, if we get to December of 2026 and the funds are not spent, we would have discussed earlier in the year our plan for those funds, whether we would want to move them to the Housing Trust Fund or back into regular pooling. And I submit this for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with a motion and then we can discuss or ask questions. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the 2022 spending plan?
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution amending the tax increment spending plan.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? I'll just say it's great that we got the extension and that level of flexibility, so I'm grateful for the state and everyone who helped with that, so thanks. Seeing no one else, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion has been approved. Item number 10B.
Thank you. This item is consideration of a resolution authorizing the decertification of tax increment financing district number 2020-2. We also discussed this earlier tonight. This is the EMI district. On January 26, 2021, the City of Richfield created TIF district number 2020-2. The redevelopment TIF district was intended to provide assistance necessary to construct a mixed-use project on property at 101 66th Street East. Several obstacles, including increased construction and material costs, have forced the developer to abandon the project. As of the end of this year, there will be no outstanding obligations related to the TIF district, and no project could take place prior to the statutory deadlines. Staff and Ellers have recommended that the TIF district be decertified. And I will note that doing this now, rather than waiting until March, will save us in administrative costs. As we mentioned, there is that interfund loan that we'll look to repay. If we continue this into 2026, then we will also be reporting then in 2027. This takes care of it this year. We can report on it to the state auditor next year and close it out.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve a resolution authorizing the decertification of tax increment financing district number 2020-2 EMI.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? Thank you for the additional detail about why now. That was going to be my question, so I appreciate that. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Item number 10C.
Thank you. We'll be asking the HRA to consider a resolution authorizing decertification of the Urban Village TIF district. The Urban Village District is also a redevelopment district. It was created to facilitate another mixed-use development located on the southeast corner of Lyndale Avenue and 66th Street. The development includes the Woodlake Center, the Oaks on Pleasant Apartments, and BMO Bank. The TIF district was certified on July 15th of 1999 and is required to decertify at the end of this year. The tax increment revenue in the form of 2 pay-as-you-go notes was paid to the developer to assist in property acquisition and excess site development expenses. While there remains a significant outstanding balance on the second note, neither the city nor the HRA are obligated to pay this amount, and all obligations are considered to be met. The 2026 estimated market value of the properties within the district is $73.6 million. This equates to an estimated $1 million in additional tax capacity in 2026. And as Rebecca also noted earlier, you are not required to approve this resolution. This will happen automatically through the state auditor's office. However, it has been city policy to bring resolutions to the HRA and city council for these items. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing decertification of the Urban Village Tax Increment Financing District.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any last comments, questions, concerns? Yes, Mr. Healy.
I just wanted to say this is a really ideal example, I think, of TIF gone right, that it's been such a great contribution to our downtown area. The buildings have aged pretty well. I feel like if I had a magic wand with that development, I would change 8% of things. It really just, it's done a really good job, and it's done exactly what we told the community it would do. So it's a really nice example of, I think, TIF gone right for Richfield. So just happy to see it 25 years later.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Taking us to item 10D.
Thank you. I had some misnumbering in my packet. Sorry about that. Item 10D, consider a resolution authorizing the decertification of the Interchange West and Lyndale Gateway TIF District. The Interchange West and Lyndale Gateway TIF District is also a redevelopment district. It was created to facilitate site assembly for the Best Buy headquarters and to facilitate redevelopment along Lyndale Avenue that created the Main Street Village senior housing projects and Castile Place townhouses. The TIF district was certified on June 14th of 1999 and is required to decertify at the end of the year. The HRA pledged increment to repay general obligation bonds related to the Penn Avenue Bridge over Interstate 494, as well as payments on pay-as-you-go notes to the housing projects and Best Buy. Final payment on the bonds was made in February. This obligation has been fully satisfied. There remain significant outstanding balances on some of the notes due largely to compounding interest. The city and HRA are not obligated to pay this amount, and all obligations are considered to be met. There's an estimated $1,471,000 in additional tax capacity in 2026 anticipated due to the decertification of this TIF district. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, yep.
Do the motion. I'll move to approve a resolution authorizing decertification of the Interchange West Lyndale Gateway Tax Increment Financing District.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That takes us to item number 11, other business. I don't believe there is any other business. So we'll move on to item number 12, executive director's report.
Thank you. I just have 2 items of note. First of all is that the Penn Station project, the Johnny O'Para's project on Penn Avenue, hopes to close next week. This week. Hopes to close this week. Abatement will be the first thing that'll happen at those buildings. There were several contractors out there last week. And then hopefully the project will be underway very soon after. And then also, the HRA perhaps was going to mention this, but there will be an opening for an HRA commissioner in 2026. Chair Vreese Daniels has reached her term limit. And so there is an application online for anyone who is interested in serving on the board. That application is open for approximately 1 month. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any HRA discussion items? I would just hang on that I encourage people to apply. It has been a great pleasure the past 9-ish, 10 years, and goes by very quickly, very, very quickly. So, yes, go ahead.
I'll say more later because you're with us for a few more months, but thank you very much for your service. I really do appreciate it.
Of course. Is there any other HRA discussion items? Seeing none, takes us to item number 14, approval of claims. Is there a motion to approve claims?
I'll make a motion to approve claims.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The claims have been approved. And that takes us to adjournment. Thank you, everyone.
I'm having the same problem, so.
Anybody need a break, breather? Okay. It is 8:06. I will call the Richfield Economic Development Authority meeting of November 17th, 2025 to order. Roll call.
Thank you. Attendance has been noted.
Thank you. Item number 3 is our open forum. As always, participants can share their comments in person, by voicemail or email, and also can request to participate virtually. You can always get more information by submitting comments and referring to the EDA agenda and minutes page on the city website. There is no one here for open forum, and I'll check. Did anyone call in?
We did not receive any calls. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, changes? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda has been approved. Takes us to item number 5, approval of the minutes of the regular Economic Development Authority meeting of August 18th, 2025. Is there a motion for approval?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, changes? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. Item number 6, presentations. I don't believe we have any presentations for the EDA this evening, so it takes us to item number 7, our consent calendar. I'll hand it over to still Executive Director Paleman. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, President Reese-Daniels. Members of the board, the consent calendar contains a single item tonight. It is acted upon by the EDA in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further EDA action is necessary on these items. However, any member may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the regular agenda for discussion and action. The single item on your consent calendar tonight is consideration of an amended agreement with the Center for Energy and Environment to authorize the budget for the administration of the apartment remodeling program for 2026. And I submit this for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there any item any commissioner would like to remove from the consent calendar? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent calendar has been approved. Taking us then to item number 9, public hearings. I do not believe we have any public hearings. Item number 10, resolutions. We have no resolutions. We have no other business. Item number 11, taking us to item number 12, Executive Director's Report.
Thank you. I do not have a report tonight.
Item number 13 then, EDA discussion items. Are there any EDA discussion items? All right, seeing none. That takes us to item number 14, approval of claims. Is there a motion to approve claims?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The claims have been approved. And that is adjournment. Thank you, everyone.